Okay, this is the sitting room. This is where we relax in the evening after our day's work. We might play a sermon over there on television, or maybe even something entertaining. I don't know that I have to explain a kitchen too. This is, of course, where we cook our meals. We both take turns cooking. I've actually made a video for YouTube right here. And this is our chapel in here. And this is where we do our best work. That is in prayer before Almighty God. Now, he's not a normal one that comes around here. But there's an ambulance 3 doors up a while back, and they feed cats. And I'm seeing those cats coming down here to eat. Don't you like what you've got there? Hello, I'm Pope Michael, and welcome to my home. I grew up in the Catholic Church, but I grew up in a unique time in the Catholic Church, which we called in the late 60s into the early 70s the changes. Vatican II decided to update the church and bring its teachings in line with the modern world. But what we realized immediately, we did not leave the church. The church actually had already left us. We just discovered the fact. I had a year and a half of formal seminary education with the Society of St. Pius X. But when I separated from them, I still felt called to the priesthood, and I compiled a 3,000 book library and educated myself, basically. That's a picture of one of my favorite saints, St. Antoninus. He, like myself, trained himself. 3 priests came up from Mexico. They said, "We are here to see Archbishop Lefebvre to ask him to work with us to elect a pope." So the seed was planted then. I became convinced of its necessity in 1987 and became actively involved. I immediately contacted my network of friends throughout the world. I became convinced we need to elect a pope, and here is why. Most did not reply. When it finally came time to hold the election itself, only 11 people showed up. 2 are children, therefore not qualified to vote. 3 others did not actually decide to participate in the election. So 6 of us gathered on July 16, and I was elected as Pope. There was not really much reaction immediately after the election because all the people I knew had already taken their stand either for the election and came, or most of them against the election and either remained silent, or a couple people sent me letters saying I should stop claiming to be Pope. There's been a shift in focus in regard to Pope Michael. For the first 10 years, it was pretty much silence. Then I found the internet. It's nice to sit here with you and have a cup of coffee. At first there wasn't much reaction, but then it slowly started shifting. And then, of course, with the election of Francis and his antics, I'll go on and people will be saying something about me on Facebook. Well, I don't believe he's Pope, but I wish he was. I don't believe he's Pope, but he's sure a lot better than Pope Francis. What I think there is a large group sitting on the sidelines, watching and wondering, should I make the jump or shouldn't I? But they are very interested, which is why we get the positive comments. I wish he was Pope. I moved to this area just a little over 6 years ago and became an active member in the Oakland Neighborhood Improvement Association. The nominating committee called me up 3 days before the election of new officers and asked me to take a position as vice president. I was elected as vice president in 2015. 2 years later, shortly before the next election of officers, several of the active members contacted me and asked me to take on president. Now I'm advisor to the board, so I'm still actually a board member. Just about a month ago, I received a phone call from Shawnee County Extension asking me to be part of their community development committee. And so I was elected to that a couple of weeks ago. Some people ask, well, how do you support yourself? Well, I work part-time as independent living work. And so starting about 10 years ago, we began reprinting out of copyright Catholic books. These things were written, some of them almost 2 millennia ago, and they're still relevant today. There are some people who think no pope will ever reign longer than St. Peter did. So the thought of succession is definitely close to my mind, and there is a plan in place amongst my clergy and people to assemble and hold an election in the event of my death. As for where is my papacy going, that is really in God's hands. I've had 2 different seminary students. The last one is now Father Francis Dominic. I don't have a proudest moment as Pope because we preach against pride. But I do have a happiest moment as Pope when I ordained my first priest, Father Francis Dominic. I'll know I've succeeded as Pope when I arrive in heaven. Failure as Pope would be going to hell. I feel very hopeful that with God's help, I'll arrive in heaven.